It began on a freezing February morning in London. At 3:42 a.m., a woman called emergency services from a townhouse in Hampstead, her voice trembling as she said her family had been attacked. 8 minutes later, two patrol cars pulled up to 27 Fitzroy Crescent. The street was silent. No smashed glass, no forced door, just a pale terrace house with its front light still burning. Inside, the air smelled faintly of bleach. The woman, Catherine Holt, sat on the marble stairs, barefoot, her white nightdress stained red. She was shaking, though her eyes were dry. When the officers asked what happened, she whispered, "He was in the house. He killed them upstairs." They found Edward Holt, a respected cardiac surgeon, lying in the master bedroom, stabbed multiple times with deliberate precision. The children, Amelia and Theo, were found in their rooms, still beneath their duvets. Each bore a single wound to the chest. No signs of struggle. No fingerprints, but the family's. The house alarm, one of the most advanced in London, hadn't gone off. Detective Inspector Eleanor Ward arrived just before dawn. Her years in homicide had taught her that the neatest scenes were often the most deceptive. And this one was spotless. The only footprints in the blood belonged to Catherine. Ward observed the woman carefully. Catherine's scalp bore a shallow cut, too clean to be the result of a violent assault. She claimed she'd been hit with a flashlight. Ward didn't respond. Forensics arrived and began their quiet, methodical work. Cameras clicked. Evidence markers bloomed like yellow flowers across the polished floor. In the kitchen, the knife block was missing 4 blades. The sink was spotless. A single child's mug sat half full of chocolate milk. Ward noted the time. 4:26 a.m. Something about the silence in the house was wrong. Not grief, not chaos, but emptiness, as though someone had cleaned emotion from the air. By morning, the press was already circling. The Holts were well known, wealthy, attractive, admired. Catherine worked as a marketing director for a tech firm called Omnivault, which specialized in artificial intelligence for security and data analytics. To neighbors, they were perfect. Family holidays, charity dinners, smiling portraits. Now, all of it was ash. Ward met with the forensic team in the driveway. "There's no sign of an intruder," one technician said. "No tool marks, no forced entry. Whoever did this had the code." Ward looked back at the door. "Then whoever did this lived here." Within hours, digital analysts pulled data from the Holt home smart systems. Every motion sensor, every door log, every light switch. A program called Ether, an AI analysis suite used by the Metropolitan Police, began to process it automatically. Originally built to detect financial fraud, it was now testing its abilities on crime scenes. At 6:13 a.m., Ether flagged the first anomaly. The alarm had been manually disarmed at 2:57 a.m. using Catherine Holt's registered code. At 3:09 a.m., motion sensors in the living room were deactivated. At 3:26, all indoor cameras were switched off. 18 minutes later, the murders took place. Ward reviewed the printout, eyes narrowing. She knew exactly what she was doing, she said. When questioned later that day, Catherine spoke in perfect order, as if reciting from a script. She said she'd heard noises, gone downstairs, and been hit on the head. When she woke, her family was gone. Ward asked her to describe the intruder. Catherine hesitated, then said he was tall, wearing black gloves and a mask. "Did you see his face?" "No." "How did he get in?" I don't know. He must have hacked the alarm." Ward watched her carefully. Catherine avoided eye contact, speaking not like a woman in grief, but one performing grief. When the detective mentioned that Catherine's company built AI surveillance software, she froze. For a fraction of a second, her polished composure faltered. Then she smiled. "I do marketing," she said, "not code." Ward wrote one word in her notebook: liar. That night, Ether cross-referenced Catherine's phone data with timestamps from the home's network. Between 2:50 and 3:30 a.m., she'd made no calls, but her phone's flashlight had turned on twice, both times in the kitchen. More disturbing were the recovered fragments of her deleted search history from 3 days before. Can over-the-counter medication cause unconsciousness? Quietest knives for home cooking. How long before sedatives wear off? Ward stared at the list, her heart heavy. It was no longer a question of who killed the Holts. It was why. Over the next 48 hours, the picture sharpened. Forensics confirmed that Edward and the children had traces of sedative in their systems. Catherine's wound was shallow, self-inflicted. Her blood on the knife handle matched transfer patterns consistent with staging. Ward stood in the cold outside the townhouse on the third morning. Behind her, the press shouted questions. Ahead of her, inside that perfect house, every surface whispered the same truth. This had not been a break-in. It was a performance. The AI had shown them the pattern, but Ward's instincts filled the rest. Catherine's financial records showed recent cash withdrawals. Her marriage was collapsing. She'd been emailing divorce lawyers, and in one of those emails, she'd written, "He thinks he can take everything. He has no idea what I'm capable of." Now, everyone knew. Rain returned the next evening, sluicing over the tarps outside 27 Fitzroy Crescent as evidence vans pulled away. Inside Belgravia Station, D.I. Eleanor Ward leaned over a glowing map of London, her eyes fixed on a neat cluster of dots that traced the Holts' final hours. Each dot came from the family's own devices, a door contact here, a sensor there. Every movement had been logged by technology Catherine herself had sold to clients as the future of safety. Ward hated neat cases. Neatness meant intention. The first set of results from the Met's digital unit arrived just after midnight. The Holt security system hadn't been hacked at all. It had been unlocked from the inside using Catherine Holt's passcode. Logs showed she'd disabled motion sensors, silenced notifications, then placed her phone face down on the counter. There was no forced entry because there had been no intruder. Still, Ward refused to rush. She'd seen staged scenes collapse before. She ordered another sweep: DNA, footprints, fiber recovery. Forensics came back empty. Only family prints, family fibers, family DNA. The walls themselves accused no stranger. By the second day, Ward's team combed through phone data. Catherine's messages were polite, curated, public. Beneath them, recovered fragments painted something else. Searches deleted hours before the murders. How to sedate children safely. Can sleep medication cause heart failure? Each search time-stamped after midnight. Ward exhaled slowly. She planned this in the dark, she muttered, scribbling the line across her notebook. Financial analysts added another fracture. Catherine had withdrawn nearly £9,000 in cash over 6 weeks, always just under reporting limits. Where the money went, no one yet knew. A quiet escape fund, perhaps, or a prelude to running. The AI platform known as Ether arrived on Ward's screen by necessity, not trust. It was a trial integration, a machine that could process millions of data points faster than any detective. Most called it a tool. Ward thought of it as a silent witness. Once the evidence feeds were uploaded, Ether began to reconstruct the timeline. 2:57 a.m. Alarm deactivated. User, C. Holt, 3:09 a.m. Motion sensors silenced, 03:26 a.m. Interior cameras turned off by voice command, 3:33 a.m. House lights dimmed, 03:42 a.m. Emergency call placed. Everything between 2:57 and 3:42 happened within Catherine's control. Ether displayed the sequence in color-coded lines, blue for routine, red for anomalies. The screen bled red. Ward felt something inside her tighten. Machines didn't dramatize, they simply exposed patterns. And every pattern pointed back to Catherine. Catherine's first interview took place the next morning. She arrived in a hospital gown under a wool coat, her wound stitched with a single butterfly plaster. Her face carried exhaustion, without grief. Ward began gently. "What time did you wake?" "Just after 3, Catherine said. "There was a sound downstairs. And then? I went to look. Someone hit me. I woke up on the floor." She described a man in a balaclava, tall, silent, gone before she could scream. When asked how he entered, she said he must have hacked the system. Ward watched the subtle choreography of her hands, thumbs stroking each other, nails clean. "Your company designs AI security, correct?" "I'm in marketing." Still, you'd know how the system works. A pause. I suppose. Ward slid the event log across the table. The alarm was disarmed from your phone. That means you Catherine blinked, a single tear perfectly timed, then whispered, "He forced me to." Ward ended the interview there. Lies, once rehearsed, unraveled best in silence. 2 days later, Ether generated a new alert. It had mined metadata from Catherine's smartwatch, tiny peaks and valleys in her heart rate. During the 999 call, when her voice rose in panic, her pulse barely changed. The system flagged the discrepancy. Physiological incongruity, 98% probability of deception. Ward stared at the line. She didn't celebrate. Machines could err, but Catherine's composure hadn't. The AI merely confirmed what intuition already whispered. By afternoon, forensics located sedative residue in the children's blood, zolpidem mixed with diphenhydramine, enough to keep them deeply asleep. Edward's sample showed the same. No intruder had forced them down. Their mother had tucked them in. CCTV footage from a Finchley Road pharmacy sealed the narrative. Catherine entered alone at 11:22 p.m., 3 days before the murders. She purchased melatonin gummies, cough syrup, and cocoa powder, paid with a prepaid card. No prescription needed, no questions asked. Ward watched the grainy video frame by frame. Catherine smiled at the cashier. There was something chilling in her ease. Murder rehearsed as routine. Ether's engineers compiled a simulation from the Holt smart home sensors. In a small theater room at Belgravia, Ward watched the recreation unfold on a sterile screen. A luminous outline of Catherine descending the stairs at 2:55 a.m., opening cupboards, boiling water, stirring. 2 mugs placed on the counter, one smaller than the other. She paused by the sink, 47 seconds of stillness, then ascended the stairs. The sensors upstairs flickered on briefly in 3 separate rooms. Each time, movement lasted under 30 seconds. The projection showed no blood, no faces, only the rhythm of deliberate action. When the lights dimmed at 3:26, the room in the simulation went black. Ward removed her glasses, throat dry. That's enough. The next search revealed an email never sent, found in Catherine's drafts folder, addressed to her husband. "You think you can just leave me? Start again with her? You've underestimated what I know. You don't walk away from me." The timestamp read 22:14, the night before the murders. Her phone also contained notes, written in her own voice-to-text app. Short phrases, disjointed, but damning. "He'll regret. They'll sleep." Peacefully, after that, Silence Ward printed every line and pinned them beside the AI timeline. Together, they formed a story too coherent to ignore. By the weekend, London tabloids were circling like crows. "The Hampstead Horror," one headline screamed. Others whispered theories of madness, jealousy, or failed perfection. Ward ignored them all. She worked from facts, blood types, timestamps, algorithms. Ether's newest correlation linked Catherine's phone to a deleted folder in her cloud storage. Inside were spreadsheets tracking Edward's work schedule, the children's medication dosages, even sleep cycles from the baby monitor app. It was not rage. It was project management. Forensics finally retrieved data from the kitchen smart speaker. Its offline cache held fragments of voice commands. "Cameras, sleep. Volume 0. Good night, my darlings." The last line, issued at 3:25 a.m., froze every officer in the briefing room. Ward pressed stop before the audio finished. Some truths didn't need replaying. That same hour, Ether cross-referenced Catherine's location data with a second anomaly. After the murders, while waiting for police, her phone's screen brightness had been adjusted 3 times, then locked. She had checked the time. She had waited exactly 9 minutes before dialing 999. 9 minutes of silence in a house of corpses. By Monday, the case file was thick enough to bury doubt. The AI's reconstruction, the forensic toxicology, the deleted searches, all converged on one conclusion. But Ward knew machines didn't convict. Humans did. She wanted Catherine's words on record. At 6 p.m., She walked into the interview room with a cup of tea and the composure of a surgeon. "Catherine, I want to ask again about the alarm," she began. "I told you. He made me." "No." Ward slid across a printed sheet. "These are the system logs. You entered your code at 2:57, then turned off cameras. No one else touched a thing." Catherine's breath quickened, not with panic, but fury. "You think that thing, that computer, knows me?" Ward leaned forward. "It doesn't need to know you. It records you." For the first time, Catherine's mask cracked. Her eyes darted left, then down. "He was going to leave," she whispered. "He was going to take them." Ward said nothing. The silence stretched until Catherine filled it. "They were mine," she breathed. "All mine." Outside the glass, the recording light burned red. The arrest followed quietly before dawn. Catherine Holt was charged with 3 counts of murder and 1 of perverting the course of justice. The AI data became the backbone of the file handed to the Crown Prosecution Service. Reporters called it the first case solved by artificial intelligence. Ward thought otherwise. It wasn't the machine that solved it. It was the arrogance of a woman who believed she could outsmart one. As she stood on Fitzroy Crescent again, dawn pale over the chimneys, Ward watched technicians carry the last evidence crates into the van. The house looked ordinary once more, but every pixel, every data line, every quiet hum of circuitry had already spoken. In the end, it wasn't screams that exposed Catherine Holt. It was repetition, the small mechanical rhythm of truth, caught by the very systems she trusted. The story should have ended with the arrest. But London didn't sleep, and neither did the case. The morning after Catherine Holt's charge, reporters thronged the steps of the Metropolitan Police headquarters. Flashes popped like small explosions as officers pushed through the crowd. Headlines devoured every new fragment. Mother of 2 accused in AI-mapped murders. For the first time, artificial intelligence wasn't a buzzword. It was the key witness. Inside Belgravia, DI Eleanor Ward stared at the incident board, now crowded with lines of data printouts, photos, and handwritten notes. The evidence was airtight. Still, she felt the gnawing discomfort of something unfinished. Motive was easy. Control, jealousy, ego. But the why, the deep pulse beneath Catherine's actions, still evaded her. Ether had done its job perfectly, but machines couldn't explain cruelty. Only people could. In her cell, Catherine stopped speaking. No tears, no pleas, just stillness. The custody officers described her as unnervingly calm, even curious. She asked how her voice sounded on the recording. She asked whether ether could be reasoned with. Ward visited her once more, hoping for a confession that felt human. Instead, Catherine smiled faintly through the glass and said, "You think I didn't know the system was watching? I built half the campaign around it. I wanted it to see me." That sentence lived in Ward's head for days. Wanted it to see me. Not hide, be seen. Maybe, Ward thought, this wasn't about erasing her life at all. Maybe it was about preserving her power in it. Forensics continued to pull fragments from every device the Holts owned. Each one told another story of control disguised as domesticity. A family calendar automatically synced between phones showed how Catherine color-coded each person. Blue for Edward, pink for Amelia, green for Theo. Hers was white, blank, uneditable. She'd removed herself from her own household schedule months earlier. Ether stitched together those digital ghosts, messages unsent, devices left awake at night, motion logs showing Catherine pacing alone for hours. The AI produced no judgment, just order, rows and lines like scars in data form. But Ward saw it for what it was, the anatomy of obsession. Every minute of the family's life had been a variable in Catherine's equation. News broke across London screens like wildfire. Opinion shows debated ethics, not grief. Was it justice when a machine built the timeline? Was this the beginning of AI policing, or the end of human doubt? Public fascination turned Catherine into a symbol. Half the city saw her as a monster who thought she could outwit truth. The other half whispered she was a victim of her own invention. a woman consumed by the same digital surveillance she sold to others. The technology hadn't framed Catherine. It had merely revealed her reflection. Late nights at her desk blurred into one another. Ward began replaying the house simulation in her head, hearing the sound of those soft, ghostly steps. The AI's reconstructions were too clean. No smell, no sound of breath, no trembling. She wondered if something about it had numbed her, if relying on a machine to remember had made her forget what it meant to feel the crime scene. Her junior officer, D.C. Menon, noticed her exhaustion. "You should go home, ma'am," she said. Ward shook her head. "She planned this house like a theater. We can't afford to miss the encore." Menon hesitated. "You think she had help?" "No," Ward said quietly. "Just ambition." A week later, Ward visited Omnivault Technologies, Catherine's workplace. The glass tower rose over Southwark like a monument to precision. Walls of mirrors, elevators that spoke in polite, genderless tones. The HR manager, pale and shaking from the scandal, handed over Catherine's company laptop. She handled major accounts, he explained. Governments, security contracts, even preliminary partnerships with the Met for Ether's public-facing design. Ward's eyes sharpened. "You're saying she worked with the same system that caught her?" The man nodded. "Irony, isn't it?" The irony ran deeper than he knew. When tech analysts decrypted the drive, they found hundreds of internal presentations, including a private folder marked Prototype Persona Models. Inside were behavioral simulations, psychological patterns mapped to marketing personas. One was named EVA. It matched Catherine's own digital footprint perfectly, spending habits, social media tone, even her phone usage rhythm. She'd built an AI version of herself long before she killed her family. Ether detected something odd when it processed Catherine's work files, a fragment of corrupted code buried in her Home Assistant's firmware. Not malicious, but modified. Someone had rewritten a portion of its local memory commands to exclude certain voice prompts from deletion. That meant Catherine had preserved conversations intentionally. Ward requested the logs. Days later, they arrived. "Good night, my darlings. Don't make Mummy choose. Everything will be fine tomorrow." The last entry came 12 minutes before the first stab wound. Ward stopped the playback halfway through. The voice was calm, intimate, rehearsed. Not insanity, not panic, just resolution. She turned off the speaker, walked to the window, and stared at the wet shimmer of London lights. For the first time, she felt the chill of what Ether represented, a machine that could replay human evil without flinching. When the CPS prepared the pretrial hearing, Ether's findings became central. Prosecutors requested a full reconstruction, not a simulation, but a presentation. Ward sat in the observation gallery as the AI projected its report onto the screen. Lines of movement, voice clips, time sequences, Catherine's entire night reduced to pure logic. Timeline probability, 99.87% match to subject-initiated sequence, the system concluded. Ether had no emotion, no hesitation. Its tone was the same whether reading a grocery list or describing murder. The courtroom fell silent. Ward realized what Catherine meant when she said she wanted to be seen. She wanted immortality, even through infamy. She wanted her story told by something incapable of pity. When Catherine finally broke her silence, it wasn't to the police. It was to her solicitor, who relayed a single handwritten statement. "They were leaving me behind. I didn't kill them in anger. I just stopped the clock before everything I built fell apart." Ward read the note twice. There was no apology, no plea for forgiveness, only that same cold precision. Her solicitor refused to comment further. Catherine remained in isolation, requesting psychology books and, strangely, technical manuals on neural networks. She still wanted to understand the machine that had unmasked her. By the time the pretrial dossier was complete, Ether had processed more than 2 terabytes of data. Its summary report included a curious line. Subject exhibits recursive behavioral loop, desire for observation. The algorithm wasn't meant to interpret motive, yet it had recognized a pattern. Catherine's need to be seen, recorded, remembered. Ward read that line late at night and thought about London, a city of cameras, sensors, and silent witnesses. Maybe Catherine was only an extreme version of everyone else, a person performing under the gaze of invisible eyes, desperate not to disappear. Weeks passed. The media circus dulled. Fitzroy Crescent remained sealed off, its windows dark, flowers wilted on the pavement. Inside her office, Ward finally signed off on the file. She should have felt closure, but what she felt was dread. Ether had proven invaluable. But what would happen when every case relied on machines that saw everything and felt nothing? The weeks between charge and pretrial felt like a slow tightening of wire. London went on with its wet commutes and crowded platforms while, in quiet rooms, the case coalesced into something that could withstand a courtroom's glare. What remained were the small questions that anchored doubt: where the knives had gone, how Catherine had tested the plan, and whether any trace existed that she could not curate. Belgravia's incident room shrank under paper. Ward insisted on one fresh sweep of everything that could still move: vehicles, drains, bins, the narrow strip of garden behind 27 Fitzroy Crescent. Uniforms groaned. She did not care. Control failed in the margins. If Catherine had left a seam showing, it would be there. It was a constable on his first homicide who found it. A bead-like stain at the lip of the rear garden drain, brown in daylight, innocent until luminol answered with a blue that rose like breath. The drain fed to a street gully 2 doors down. A slender camera snake went in. The images returned slime and grit, and, deeper, the metallic shoulder of something caught on a bend. When the crews lifted the grate and clawed by hand, it came up with a sucking sound. A kitchen knife, the Holt's brand. The blade wrapped in a single layer of plastic film that had trapped just enough air to snag and hold. The edge had been honed recently. The handle's textured valleys yielded tiny islands of skin cells. They belonged to Edward and to Catherine. The lab work matched microscopic striations on the blade to the abrasions inside the empty slot of the oak block. Ether's material analysis module overlaid the patterns like fingerprints. The match score landed at 99.2%. Practice had left its signature twice, once on the wood, once on steel. That should have been enough, but Ward kept pressing the perimeter. If Catherine rehearsed, where and how? The dishwasher's 9-minute run on the night of the murders already read like a test that had turned nervous. Ether widened its search across the previous month's appliance logs and found 3 other anomalous cycles, each just under 10 minutes, each at an hour when the Holt's home ordinarily slept. The kitchen tap's temperature spikes matched those nights too. The system marked the cluster preparatory behavior. The pattern spread beyond the kitchen. Ether mapped the friction history of the alarm keypad, tiny oil traces from repeated contact. Over the fortnight before the murders, the same 4 digits were tapped 6 separate times in the small hours within 30 seconds of one another, as if someone had been training their fingers to move without thought. The keypad's corners showed faint abrasion, the kind that comes from wiping briskly with a soft cloth. Erasure is a kind of note-taking, Ward thought. It circles what matters by trying not to leave it. Digital forensics trawled the Holt's car. The boot latch glowed under reagent, a smear the size of a thumbnail, washed once and not washed well. In the spare wheel cavity lay a ball of masking tape and a strip of black plastic bin liner. The car's telematics told Ether when the boot had been opened, 3:39 a.m., 3 minutes before the call to 999. There had not been enough time to drive anywhere, but there had been time to step out into the back garden, lift a drain cover, and let gravity work. London's traffic cameras gave the wider rehearsal its compass. Automatic number plate recognition had marked the Holt's SUV, making 3 late-night circuits around Gospel Oak in the month before the murders, each time stopping on streets with deep curb drains, each time idling, then moving on. It was as if Catherine had been looking for a place to feed something to the city's veins. In the end, she'd chosen the line right outside her own fence. Ward walked the route one evening alone, hood up against the spitting rain. The drains hissed. You could drop the past into them and hear nothing. Omnivault yielded another seam. On Catherine's work laptop, buried inside a folder of discarded campaign drafts, analysts found a document titled Living with the System. It read like a manifesto for clients, how to frame AI not as surveillance, but as trusted memory. Midway through, there was a paragraph struck through in gray. Truth does not require drama. It requires consistency. The observer who notices small deviations owns the narrative. The line had been cut by a supervisor's comment bubble. Too cold. Humanized Catherine had not rewritten it. She'd saved it privately. Catherine's fascination with observed life wasn't theory. Her home speaker contained a hidden code flag she'd written herself. Retain local small talk equals true, forcing it to keep casual utterances others would erase. The device held midnight fragments no one should hear. A lullaby off-key, whispers to a sleeping child, the sound of breath between sentences. For Ward, it proved Catherine curated even tenderness. The prepaid card from the chemist led Ether to 2 more purchases, a SIM card and a cheap phone from Houston. CCTV showed a hooded woman with Catherine's build. The phone, found later in her desk at Omnivault, had wiped logs, but the network hadn't forgotten. 3 short calls pinged a mast near Hampstead Heath 3 nights before the murders. The number dialed a minicab firm. The booking was cancelled a minute later. A false start. Ward asked Ether to overlay those pings with weather data. Clear skies, freezing air, a wildlife camera catching a lone figure among birch trees for 9 minutes. The same span. Catherine waited in her kitchen before calling 999. Not grief, rehearsal. Every system she touched kept a fragment of her. An old baby monitor app still stored faint images. 2 mugs, a blurred gown, a hand twisting a knob. Each file bore a timestamp that traced the final rehearsal, 2 nights before the murders. As evidence mounted, the defense abandoned claims of AI error and turned to psychology, stress, dissociation, collapse. The Crown responded with raw logs and 1 sentence. These are not opinions, they are acts. Ward knew juries couldn't read data. She and the digital team built 3 simple exhibits. The kitchen, 2 mugs, a scalding tap, precision, where love should be. The stairs, weight, rhythm, footsteps without faces. The drain, a knife descending through brick and water. No narration, just London's silent systems testifying. Then came the ghost clip. Ether flagged an acoustic anomaly, not from a mic, but from a vibration sensor on the Holt's smart fridge. A forensic specialist reconstructed whispers from those microtremors. Amid the distortion, 1 sentence surfaced. Shh, now, love. This is the last time timestamp, 3:24 a.m. 1 minute before, good night, my darlings. Ward sent the clip to CPS, unsure if it would survive court. It didn't matter. It gave the story a heartbeat. Later, an exhibits officer found an old family photo tucked in a diary. Edward with the children, Catherine unsmiling beside them. On the back, in her tidy hand, everything in place. Once domestic pride, now prophecy. At the final briefing, Ward reviewed the night's small, merciless details. The 257 keypad, the 9-minute pause, the drained blade, the silk nightdress, washed on delicate. She never spoke the children's names. Everyone knew them. The prosecutor closed his folder. If the judge allows the digital exhibits, this case will be airtight. No ghosts, no gaps. Ward left in silence, walking to Fitzroy Crescent 1 last time. The crime scene tape had been replaced, the flowers renewed. The house looked ordinary again, indifferent. The machine had done what it was built to do. It saw Catherine's repetitions and named them truth. The police had done what they were sworn to do, translate that truth into consequence. Between those two, Ward finally understood. Catherine wasn't undone by code or chance, but by her own precision. The pretrial hearing loomed. Reporters would swarm. Lawyers would argue. Ward would sit behind the prosecution with her notebook and the echo of that whispered line caught by a refrigerator. Outside, London breathed its damp electric breath, and under the drizzle, one detective stood alone, certain that the story, at last, was whole.